we present Beowulf, an original adaptation, written and read for you by Jon Buckeridge.
Part 10. The Cavern. Chaos reigned in the hall of Hierot. In the wake of the shadow attack, people were still huddled together, glancing fearfully into the darkened corners of the room and calling for more lamps. Danes who had not slept in the hall and had returned to their own homes were now hurrying to join them, drawn by the noise. The room was a cacophony of voices, some crying, some calling explanations to new arrivals, some barking orders for firewood and oil lamps. Each warrior still held a bared blade, and their eyes strained to the shadows in case the attack was not over, but had merely withdrawn. All of this Beowulf ignored, his sole focus on Hrothgar as the king cried out his grief.
"It has taken him," the old man cried, "my comrade Ashera. He was a brother to me, my shoulder-to-shoulder man in the shield walls of our youth. He was my closest friend in these long years since. I must go after him."
Beowulf could well understand the king's grief. He had found no bond closer than the one forged between brothers in battle. That certain knowledge that a man might hold your life in his hands and offered you his in return was humbling beyond words, and he felt it with each of his own Geatland warriors. He would not be the one to deny the king what he saw as his duty, to chase down and recover or avenge his sworn brother. "Indeed, we must," he told the king, and he saw the mix of relief and surprise in the man's eyes that Beowulf had not tried to stop him.
"You shall ride with me?" asked the king.
"I shall ride with you," Beowulf pledged. "Axel, gather the horses and then split our men. Leave most to guard here, then two shall ride with the king and me." His friend nodded and hurried away, and Beowulf turned back to the king.
"I shall ride with you," declared Hrethik, the king's son. "So shall I," said Hrothmund, a heartbeat behind. "No," declared Hrothgar and Beowulf in one voice, and Beowulf acquiesced as the king explained. "You must stay here. We ride to danger, perhaps to death. You saw the shadow beast we faced." The princes shuddered at the memory, and the king continued, "My heirs must remain here, to lead our people if the worst should come." The princes did not like it, but they bowed to the old king's will. Beowulf ran to grab weapons and armour, taking up the new helm, sword and belt, and the mail shirt of Wayland. He had not expected to test them all so soon, but what a test it would be. Within moments, a small party was formed. Leif and Axel rode with Beowulf on the horses gifted to them the night before. By the king's side rode Unferth with a party of the Danes' best warriors. The black of night was just turning to blue as the sun threatened the sky, and in that fledgling light they set out in search. There had not been time to find scenting hounds, but the way was marked for them in other ways. The black blood of Grendel and the bright red of Ashera. Their faces grim, they followed the grisly trail as best they could. After some time of hard riding, the sun began to crest on the horizon, and in that early morning light they found a gruesome prize. Where the forest opened up into a vale with mountains all around, the land dropped suddenly, carved away by a huge lake below. By the shores of this lake, they found the severed head of Ashera, a pool of crimson surrounding it. "Oh, my brother!"
the king cried out, tears filling his eyes as he dismounted his horse and rushed towards his friend's remains, Unferth close behind. Giving the king his space for mourning, Beowulf surveyed the lands around them. "The trail ends here," said Leif, confirming his own thoughts, but the man went on. "Both trails end here, Grendel's and Ashera's. Whatever path the creature took to reach Hierot, it starts at the water's edge." Beowulf had not quite made that connection, certain the trail would pick up further across the lake. But Leif was always a much better huntsman than him, and he trusted the man's opinion. Together the two of them peered out across the water, now lit by the gold of the early morning sun. There was no sign of any path or cut-through that might lead further overland, and that left them only one option, as Leif had said. He motioned to one of the Dane warriors who had ridden with them. "Are there caves beneath this waterline?" he asked the man.
"I'm afraid I don't know, Lord Beowulf," the young man said.
"I do," came the voice of Unferth as he strode over. "This land has been walked by my family for centuries, and there is indeed a rumour of caves in this lake. No man in his right mind goes down there, though. These waters are deep, and it is said that there are water dragons and foul creatures that guard the entrance to the caves." "Well, let us see if that rumour is true," Beowulf said, stripping off his cloak and sword belt and passing them to Leif, leaving only the mail shirt. The armour covered his torso well and hung down over the tops of his arms and legs, leaving him enough room to move easily. With this he wore his new helm and carried the newly gifted sword in his hand as he made his way towards the lake.
"Do not do this, my son,"
Hrothgar called from his place, kneeling beside what remained of his comrade.
"I have lost so many. Must I lose you as well? This is a feud between us and the creature. We have taken from it, it has taken from us in kind. We shall pay whatever weregild it needs to end this, and then no more must die."
"Another tribute, uncle," Beowulf replied, incredulous. He knew the king was grieving, but surely he knew better than this. "You think that such a creature would honour your gold and leave you be? Did this appeasement work with Grendel? No. It would take and take and take from you until you had no more, and then what happens? The Danes forever huddle in the firelight, afraid of their own shadows? This is an ancient monster of malice and ill intent. It shall not stop unless we stop it." In the king's tearful eyes he saw him accept this as truth, and he nodded to Beowulf.
"So be it, Beowulf. May your God keep you safe and bring you back to us," the old man proclaimed.
"I pray that also," Beowulf agreed. "But if it is my weird to die here, I ask for you to be as father to my men who have come bravely with me. Treat them well and see them home." The old king nodded, and Beowulf went on. "May you also send the gifts and treasure you gave to me to my lord King Hygelac. Let him see the honour his men have won, and use it to build the glory of the Geats for years to come."
"It shall be so," the king agreed solemnly. "These men shall stand as witness."
The Danes and Geats around him nodded, and Beowulf turned to the water. "Beowulf, wait!" came Unferth's voice behind him, and turning, Beowulf saw the man had drawn his sword, but was offering it to him hilt first. "My lord king gave you a fine sword," Unferth declared, "but this one is finer. This is Hrunting, and it has been in my family for time beyond counting. They say it was quenched in blood, and has had a taste for it ever since. Many monsters it has killed, and great deeds it has done through the years. I swear to you there is no finer blade you can carry by your side. If anything can kill this shadow beast, it is Hrunting." Beowulf paused, not sure how to react. He did not trust Unferth, not by a long way, but he was certainly a capable warrior, and Beowulf did not believe he would use an unworthy blade. His eyes flickered to the side and caught with King Hrothgar's, who nodded at him slowly. "So be it then," he thought. "Thank you, Unferth. I shall take you up on this great honour." He took the sword from the man, giving it a few testing swings and nodding in approval. "It is indeed a finely made weapon, and I would have it known that if I am unable to return Hrunting to his rightful owner, then Unferth is to inherit this blade in its place." He passed the magnificent sword the king had given him to Unferth. "It shall be so," the king confirmed once again, and without any further delay, Beowulf turned and leapt into the water. The cold was what struck him first of all. The mail shirt may have been many things, but warm was not one of them. As he kicked his way out, he saw it was indeed deep, as Unferth had said. Within a few strokes, the lake bed dropped away beneath him, and the shadowy depths were all that was left. Taking a deep breath, he dove down into the darkness, and was taken. In the murky depths he could not see, but Beowulf felt powerful arms wrap around him and grip him tightly, hauling him deeper into the lake. He struggled and struck out with Hrunting as he was dragged along, but nothing seemed to stop this creature that was holding him so tightly. From out of the darkness, he saw vague, huge shapes swimming towards him, lunging at him with tooth and fin, but his mail shirt and helm stood strong. The pressure of the depths began to push on his ears, and he felt the air in his lungs begin to burn. This was what the creature intended, he realized, to drown him in these depths. There would be no fight, no chance of vengeance, no ending of the feud. But at that moment, their direction changed. He felt soft, sucking earth beneath his feet and knew they had reached the lake bottom. No longer going down, he was now being dragged sideways along the very bed of the lake. He felt the pressure change, and darkness doubled as they entered a tunnel, or perhaps that was the blackness of drowning creeping in around his vision. He felt his mind begin to go fuzzy, his last thoughts floating and drifting away from him in the darkness, and he knew this must be his weird, to die here in these foul, forgotten depths. Air. Beowulf's head broke the surface of the water and he tasted air at last. It was dank, musty air, but it was air nonetheless, and Beowulf drank deeply of it. The pressure was gone from around him, and he'd finally been released. He felt firm, rocky footing beneath his feet, and blindly he dragged himself out of the water on his hands and knees, feeling sand beneath him. Gratefully he fell onto his back and heaved in great lungfuls of sweet, sweet air, just happy to be alive, until his senses returned and he remembered how much danger he was in. To his great surprise, he realized he still held Hrunting, clutched tightly in his hand. He scrambled to his feet, eyes straining in the darkness, holding the sword in front of him. He could not see, but he knew he was in some kind of cave or cavern. The cool, damp staleness of the air and the echoes as water dripped down told him that much. The place smelled foul and musty and reeked of death, and he shuddered to think what might be all around him. From his left, he heard a sharp clicking noise and a spark flashed. For half a heartbeat, the cave was brilliant white. Another spark came, then another, and finally, a flame caught light. In the cloying darkness of the cave, the fledgling fire felt blinding. His eyes tracked it as the flame dropped down and immediately burst ablaze as a great fireball was lit. Another went up, and another, and suddenly Beowulf found himself blinking as firelight bathed the cave. He caught a brief flash of his surroundings. He saw cave walls covered in rusted weapons and armor. He saw a great throne carved out of the rock that surrounded it. He saw the rotting corpses of fish and eels and water beasts and men all piled in one corner. Looking down, he saw he was indeed standing on sand. The space around him was a small, muddy beach, the waters of the lake lapping softly up against it before flowing into the rocky shadows of the cave. He was not alone on this small sandbank. Laid out next to him, lovingly, was the huge body of Grendel. The arm he had ripped away now carefully put back in place, its hands folded together across its chest. In confusion he gaped around, Hrunting still held out before him, trying to see some clue as to what this place was and who had brought him here. A wailing scream broke into his thoughts, the same unholy wail he had heard the night before in Hierot, and he span to find its source. Striding towards him between the fireballs, stepping out of the shadows themselves, came a figure, the one he had glimpsed in Hierot, tall and lithe and fearsome. This creature was like Grendel, and yet not like Grendel. Certainly otherworldly, certainly Jotun. It had the same slate eyes as Grendel, with those brilliant blue sparks of light at the centre. It too had horns, though these were different, rising from its brow and trailing down the sides of its face, their points meeting beside its mouth. Sleek raven hair, still dripping wet, hung in matted braids from its head. The rest was where it started to differ. This creature's skin was not grey but black. Or perhaps that was the shadow. It seemed to wear the shadow around itself like a cloak or great feathery wings. Beowulf could not see where this creature ended and the shadows began, and perhaps that was how they liked it. So why had it lit the fires then? And why had it brought him here? Why not drown him in the lake depths and be done with it? Again, the creature's cry cut into his thoughts, and he took a step back as it paced towards him. It raised a jet-black arm and pointed a taloned claw at the body of Grendel, roaring another high-pitched shriek. As that arm moved, the shadow broke momentarily, and the firelight revealed something more of the shape of this creature. Female. The female of Grendel's kind? Perhaps its mate? No, that did not feel right. Its mother. Yes, Grendel's mother. Suddenly it was all clear to him why he had not been drowned, why he had been dragged here, why the fires had been lit to show him the cavern. Grendel's mother, grieving the death of her son, wanted him to see her wrath, wanted him to know why he would die, wanted him to understand who it was he had killed and who it was that would kill him. Yes, he understood, and from the way Grendel's mother cocked her head, those blue spark eyes narrowing, he could see she knew it too. She threw herself at him.
Thanks for listening. Beowulf was a Settle Stories commission written and read for you by Jon Buckeridge. Story editor was Miriam Sarin. Intro music was Warrior by Hartsman. Outro music was Travel in the Ocean by Monument Music. It was a Parable Arts production.